All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to get into the season overview, season recap of the Buffalo Bills, and then we'll take a look at what they've done in the offseason so far, what they could potentially address during the draft. So, going into the year, I had the Bills making the playoffs. I had them as a wild card team because, to bring up once again, thankfully this will probably be the last time I ever bring this up, but I had the Jets winning the AFC East. And I started drinking the Kool-Aid on the Bills not making the playoffs early on in the offseason because, they let go of so many guys. But then I kind of came back a little bit and said, you know what, I can't not I can't not have them in the playoffs. So I had them winning 10 games, making the playoffs. Now, not only did they win more than 10 games, they won the division, and they also had Josh Allen, who won MVP. They ended up going 13-4. They got the 2 seed, and they got off to a roaring start. Um, they started off the year 3-0. They had a comeback win against the Cardinals. Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns in the game, 2 passing, 2 rushing. They won 34-28, comeback win. Then you had the defense pick off 2 or 3 times. Allen didn't have a monster game, but they ended up winning that one 31-10. And then they were all over Jacksonville, 47-10. Josh Allen, 4 touchdowns in the game, was their leading rusher. But then they went to they slid a little bit because then they went up against the Ravens and the Texans. They lost both of those games. They got destroyed by the Ravens, 35-10. Derrick Henry had almost 200 yards rushing in the game. I had that big run early on in the game. Josh Allen was not great. The Bills really, as a whole, were not great in that game. And then the Texans, they lost a relatively close game, 23-20. I think it was a game-winning field goal. Yeah, Kymie Fairbairn, a 59-yarder to win the game. So the Bills dropped a couple games, and you thought, oh, that's not good. But then they proceeded to win 6 straight games going into the bye. They beat the Jets on Monday night. The Jets kind of beat themselves in that game, but they won that. They beat up on the Titans. They beat up on the Seahawks in Seattle. They won on a late field goal by Tyler Bass against the Dolphins. They beat the Colts 30-20. And then this was the game of the year at this point, and that was the Chiefs and the Bills. Chiefs visiting the Bills. This is the first time that Patrick Mahomes playing Josh Allen in the regular season with fans in Buffalo. And the Bills got the better of them because Josh Allen had that signature play on the 4th and 2 that put them up 29-21. They kicked the extra point. So, they put them up by 2 scores. And the Bills were able to win that game. And you thought, okay, could this be the Bills' year? So then they went into the bye week. They come out of the bye week, and they play that snow game against the 49ers where Josh Allen not only throws a touchdown, but he has a receiving touchdown on the same play. And that's why I ended up getting eliminated from my fantasy playoffs in one of my leagues. But then you also had the Bills as a team run for over 200 yards against the Niners. And, so that got them to 10-2 at that point. Then they got upset by the Rams. That was a very high-scoring game, 44-42 the final score. Josh Allen had 6 total touchdowns in the game. He had 342 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks, had 3 rushing touchdowns. Khalil Shakir, 5 receptions for 106 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, they ended up losing that, so their winning streak got snapped. But then they played the Lions the following week, and they won that game. Josh Allen, 4 touchdowns in the game, 2 rushing, 2 passing. He almost had another touchdown pass where it was like, a jump shot, but there was a penalty on the play, and they called it back. But yeah, Bills ran the ball for almost 200 yards in that game, so they knocked off the Lions. They came back against the Patriots. They were down early in that. They won. And then they beat up on the Jets, 40-14. And then they played their. Josh Allen came in, played like the first. I think he played like the first snap, but then they took him out. Patriots ended up winning against their backups. Then you had the playoff game against the Broncos, and the Broncos got off to a fast start. Bo Nix throws that touchdown to Troy Franklin. And you're like, oh wow, This is going to be a tough game for the Bills. And then the Bills scored 31 unanswered points. And then you had a very entertaining game between them and the Ravens. Ravens kind of beat themselves with the turnovers. Mark Andrews drops the 2-point conversion. Bills end up winning that game. And then they advance against the Chiefs in the championship game. And they came up short. A lot of people talk about the first down call. Thankfully, that hopefully won't be a problem anymore. But, Josh Allen played well in the game. And, he had a chance at the end when he threw that, heaved up that pass that Kincaid couldn't come down with. It's just the Chiefs own them in the postseason. And that will change at some point, I would imagine. But for now, it has not. So the Bills went 13-4. They went to the championship game. They ended up losing, coming up short there. Josh Allen wins his first ever MVP. He had 28 touchdowns and 6 picks. He had 12 rushing touchdowns on the year. Passed for 3,700 yards. James Cook had 16 rushing touchdowns. Had over 1,000 yards. So that was his best season. Their leading receiver was Khalil Shakir. He had 821 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Keon Coleman had 556 and 4 touchdowns. Dalton Kincaid had a couple of touchdowns. Matt Collins was the leading touchdown recipient. He had 5 on the season. He's now no longer there. He left and went to New England. They did acquire Amari Cooper at the trade deadline. Didn't really do much in his time there. The Bills, I think, in this upcoming season, they're hoping they get more contributions out of their receivers. You're hoping Keon Coleman takes that next step. They paid Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir was their best receiver. But yeah, you're hoping that some of the other guys step up there. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the defense was, it was probably an average defense. The leading sack player was, or their sack leader was Greg Rousseau. He had 8 sacks. They paid him this offseason. Epinesa had 6 sacks on the year. Von Miller had 6. Now Von Miller is no longer there. And they had a handful of players that had 2 interceptions on the year. And then this offseason, they signed Joshua Palmer. They added him to the receiving corps. They signed Dane Jackson, a corner. Signed a couple of safeties. They signed some defensive linemen. They signed Larry Ogunjobi and Michael Hoyt from the Rams. Both of those guys are actually going to be suspended for the first 6 games. But they did bring in Joey Bosa, so he's going to be the Von Miller replacement. If Bosa could stay healthy, that could be a good player on the defensive line. But they've made some moves. And let's see what they do in the draft. Maybe they go offense. Maybe they draft a receiver. I don't know. I think maybe you could see them go defense in this upcoming draft. But we'll see. Not a lot of splashy moves that they've made this offseason. I mean, I guess you could throw Joey Bosa in there on a 1-year deal. But this was a year that the Bills were looked at as a team that wasn't really in the conversation of being in contention, and they made it all the way to the championship game. And a lot of credit has to go to Josh Allen and what he was able to do. He carried that team. And, he's one of those guys where if you take him off the Bills are not a playoff team. They don't even come close to the playoffs without Josh Allen. And, it was one of the debates of the season where you're kind of saying, well, who's going to win MVP? It's going to be Lamar Jackson. It's going to be Josh Allen. You can make the argument that it should have been Lamar, but he ended up getting first-team All-Pro. I thought they were that stretch between the Rams and Lions games, I thought that was the stretch where I was like, Josh Allen won the MVP. Because you have 6 touchdowns in one game, and then you have 5 touchdowns in another. And you could also throw in the team record. The Bills had a better record than the Ravens, and Josh Allen was doing it with less. So, but I if Lamar won it, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But you kind of got the sense that Josh Allen was going to get the MVP, and rightfully so. He deserves it. Now it's about getting that Super Bowl ring. at some point. We saw Jalen Hurts finally break through in this Mahomes era and win one. Now let's see who's the next guy to do it. Could it be Josh Allen? The strong possibility of that happening, but just as long as they don't run into the Chiefs, because it seems like every AFC team has had a problem with the Chiefs as of late. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the Bills. What are some of your early expectations going into next year? Who do you think that they are going to target in this upcoming draft? Let me know in the comments. But that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well on the network. I hope that, for the most part, your bracket is still intact. Mine is. Had a couple of Sweet 16 teams go down, like I said, with Clemson and Missouri as well. But hopefully, Duke doesn't lose today. Do not need to see them lose because I have them winning the whole thing in the majority of my brackets. Just as long as my Final Four team survives, as we move along here in the tournament. But we do have baseball coming up next week. Baseball is starting next week, so there will be some predictions. Going to take a look at some of these teams this weekend to get more familiar with the rosters. Because obviously I am not, all over every single team, but we'll make our predictions. Maybe a World Series prediction, and opening day. I know we just had it, but now everybody else starts next Thursday. So less than a week away. So I can't wait for that. And we'll see what happens this weekend with March Madness. Should be fun. And so until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.